Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're looking at a really profound idea, one that changes how we think about emotional pain.
Yes, the idea that trauma isn't just something we, think about or tell stories about.
Exactly. It's something our bodies do, something they physically hold on to.
It's a critical shift. For so long, the focus was mainly on memory, on talk therapy. But our source today insists we need to look, deeper, right into our own physiology, our nervous system.
And that source is Dr. Bessel van der Kolk's landmark 2014 book, The Body Keeps the Score, Brain, Mind, and Body in the Healing of Trauma.
Mm-hmm. People often call it the Bible of trauma recovery. It gives you a sense of its impact.
It really does. So our mission today is to unpack that core idea, trauma living in the body. We'll look at the neuroscience he presents.
And explore some of these body-based paths to healing he talks about, things that go beyond just talking.
Right. We want to pull out those insights that make this useful for you, the listener, moving from theory to maybe some practical understanding.
Okay, so let's start with that main argument. The title itself, The Body Keeps the Score. What's that mean physically?
Yeah, how does the body keep score?
Well, the central idea is that trauma is fundamentally physiological. It's about survival. When someone faces something completely overwhelming, a threat, could be ongoing abuse, could be one terrible event.
Okay.
The nervous system flips into survival mode. But the key is it gets stuck there. It kind of rewires itself to act like the danger is always present, even years later.
So the body's basically trapped in that hyper-aroused state, always ready to fight or flee, activating the sympathetic nervous system.
Exactly that. Van der Kolk's research shows this isn't just a feeling, it shows up physically. Think chronic stress hormones like cortisol, just constantly elevated.
You're right.
Rapid heart rate, maybe digestive issues, breathing that's always shallow, muscle tension leading to chronic pain. It's the body's alarm system stuck in the on position. It's not psychosomatic in the old sense, it's physiology.
Wow. But living like that, constantly on high alert, how do people even manage? It sounds exhausting, impossible.
Well, that's where the other side of it comes in. Dissociation. If you can't physically escape the threat,
the brain tries to escape the feeling of it.
Precisely. It leads to this emotional numbing, this detachment. People describe feeling like they're not really there, unable to feel joy, struggle to connect. So you have this paradox. The system is hyper alert for threats, but also kind of shut down emotionally. It's a coping mechanism, but a very costly one.
So the big takeaway here is the body remembers even if the conscious mind can't form a neat story about it. Or maybe never could.
That's it. Your breathing, your posture, your gut feelings, they can hold the memory of threat, even without words.
Which really underscores why healing has to involve the body, not just the narrative.
Absolutely. You have to address that physiological memory.
Okay, so that leads us naturally to the brain. Why does the body get stuck like this? Why doesn't it just process the event and move on, file it under past? What's the neuroscience tell us?
Yeah, this is where it gets really fascinating. Trauma doesn't just feel bad. It actually physically reshapes parts of the brain. And these changes, van der Kolk shows, directly link to those classic PTSD symptoms we hear about. The re-experiencing, the avoidance, the hypervigilance.
Okay, so let's break that down. He highlights 3 key brain areas that get altered, right?
Yes. First up is the amygdala. Think of it as the brain smoke detector. It spots threats.
Okay.
In trauma survivors, it becomes overactive. Way too sensitive. It keeps the person in this constant state of fear or anxiety. And critically, it often uses what's called the low road, a super fast path from senses to reaction.
Meaning the panic or anger kicks in before the thinking brain even gets the message.
Exactly. You react before you consciously process why. And while the amygdala is essentially yelling danger, the prefrontal cortex or PFC, that's our rational brain, the part for planning, regulating emotions.
That just goes offline.
Pretty much. It gets suppressed. That's why people struggling with trauma often find it hard to think clearly, make decisions, or calm themselves down when triggered. The brain prioritizes immediate survival over thoughtful analysis. Like, if a tiger's chasing you, you don't stop to analyze its stripes, right? You run.
That makes perfect sense. It explains that feeling of being overwhelmed, unable to access coping skills.
Right.
Okay, and a third part. That relates to memory.
Yes, the hippocampus. Its job is crucial for memory-taking experiences and putting them in context, time, place, sequence. It basically labels a memory as, that happened then.
And trauma interferes with that.
It can damage or inhibit the hippocampus, so the memory doesn't get properly filed, it stays fragmented, raw, sensory. It's implicit memory, not a neat story.
So it's not a narrative you recall, but maybe flashes of images, sounds, physical sensations, without that past label.
Exactly. And when something triggers it, the brain doesn't experience it as a memory of the past. Because the PFC is offline and the amygdala is firing, the brain and the body feel like it's happening right now. That's the neurological reality of a flashback.
Understanding those physical brain changes really makes you question traditional approaches, doesn't it? If the brain is literally wired differently for danger, how much can just talking about it achieve?
And that's a major point Van der Kolk makes. He critiques the over-reliance, sometimes, on just medication and talk therapy. Now, talk therapy is incredibly valuable for understanding, for making sense of things.
But it might not reach that deep physical memory?
Often, it doesn't fully connect with that implicit bodily memory system. You can understand intellectually, I am safe now, but if your amygdala is still firing like crazy, that knowledge hasn't landed physiologically.
It's like knowing the war ended, but your body's still crouched in the trench.
That's a great way to put it. So the real task of recovery isn't just changing the story. It's about regulating that underlying physical alarm system. It's about helping the mind and body reconnect so the person can finally feel safe in their own skin. Language alone often can't bridge that gap.
This is where his work gets really practical, really revolutionary. He advocates for treatments that are focused squarely on the body, on embodiment. What kind of approaches did he find actually worked to calm that nervous system down?
He really champions methods that work directly with that physiological alarm system, sometimes bypassing the cognitive parts of the brain that might be overwhelmed. The most accessible ones, yoga and breath work.
We hear a lot about mindfulness in yoga, but why is conscious breathing specifically so powerful for trauma?
Because your breath is probably the most direct voluntary route you have to influence your autonomic nervous system. The book links this to the vagus nerve, especially the ventral vagal part that's our main calming pathway. When you consciously slow down your breathing, particularly extending the exhale, you physically stimulate that nerve. It sends a signal up to the brainstem saying, essentially, okay, you're safe now. It helps restore that sense of control that trauma takes away.
That's powerful. It reframes breathing from just breathing to an actual neurological tool for self-regulation. What about some of the more maybe tech-based methods he mentions?
Yeah, one really interesting one is neurofeedback. This involves basically watching your own brainwave activity on a screen in real time.
So you see what your brain is doing.
Exactly. And through that feedback, you learn, kind of like training a muscle, to consciously influence those brainwaves, to practice shifting into calmer, more regulated states. You're essentially learning to calm your own amygdala by seeing the immediate result.
Wow, so you're actively practicing that internal regulation and getting immediate confirmation. That sounds very empowering.
It can be highly effective for regaining a sense of agency. Now, it's important to mention something. The book acknowledges a real-world challenge. Methods like neurofeedback or some specialized somatic therapies can be expensive. Accessibility is a definite issue.
That's a crucial point, yeah. Okay, besides the tech, the book also talks quite a bit about EMDR. That's eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. How does that work?
EMDR uses what's called bilateral stimulation. Often it's guided eye movements back and forth or sometimes tapping. The idea is to have you hold the difficult memory in mind while engaging in this stimulation.
Okay, a dual focus.
Right. And that bilateral input seems to help the brain reprocess the traumatic memory differently. It helps move it from being stuck in that raw, sensory, limbic part of the brain.
And allows it to be integrated, filed properly by the thinking brain, the cortex, as something that happened in the past.
That's the goal, yeah. To take the emotional charge out and make it feel like a memory, not a current event.
I also notice he includes things like theater and movement therapy. That feels like it brings the body back into the picture in a really active way.
Absolutely. These creative, expressive therapies are vital because trauma often involves, well, frozen energy. Survival responses, fight or flight, that couldn't be completed at the time get stuck in the body.
Like literally feeling frozen or tense.
Exactly. Movement, dance, theater. These allow people to safely express those impulses, to physically work through and rewrite those stuck patterns, to complete those actions in a safe space. It's about reclaiming the body's expression.
So looking at all these breathwork, neurofeedback, EMDR, movement, they all seem to share that core aim, helping the person regulate their own nervous system and feel safe now.
They do. And that brings us to maybe the most fundamental point Van der Kolk emphasizes again and again, the absolute necessity of safe relationships.
Yes, connection.
Trauma is incredibly isolating. It shatters trust. So healing doesn't just happen through techniques alone. It happens in the context of connection, feeling seen, understood, and genuinely safe with other people. Empathy, consistent support.
Right.
That's the antidote to the isolation. That safety in relationship allows the nervous system to finally relax, to engage that calming ventral vagal pathway.
Okay, this has been incredibly insightful. Let's try to synthesize this for everyone listening. We've established trauma isn't just psychological, it's deeply physiological, rooted in the nervous system. We've seen how specific brain parts change that overactive amygdala, the offline prefrontal cortex, the struggling hippocampus. And crucially, we've learned that healing often requires moving beyond just talk, embracing these body-focused methods to regulate that physical alarm system.
And the key takeaways for you, the listener, really boil down to this. First, safety comes first. You need to feel safe before you can process difficult things. Second, connection heals. Safe relationships are paramount.
And maybe most importantly,
You can change your brain and nervous system. It takes practice, consistent, focused practice, like breath work or mindful movement. But rewiring is possible.
so knowing all this, knowing trauma is physiological but also regulatable, what's the final thought for our listeners today?
Well, healing isn't about erasing the past, forgetting what happened. It's about learning to live fully now, without the past hijacking your body's reactions. And Van der Kolk shows this biological change, this rewiring, comes through practice. Daily, maybe small, but consistent practice. So the question for you is, given that, what's one small, consistent practice rooted in body awareness? Maybe just focusing on your breath for 2 minutes, maybe gentle stretching that you could try incorporating today. Something to begin that process of consciously reclaiming that sense of safety and agency within your own body.
That's the challenge and the possibility we leave you with. Straight from the research, tailored for your journey. Until next time on The Deep Dive, keep digging deeper.